Hey guys, these are the guided notes for going over translations, the second day of it, when we're talking about something called compositions. A composition is where you take a transformation and then a second transformation is performed on the image of the first transformation, which is a really long-winded way to say it's just multiple transformations. What we're going to be doing today is basically two translations. So you're going to slide your image and then you're going to slide it again. So the directions for this one say find the, I'm trying to move that screen a little. There we go. Find the coordinates of the image after the composition of a translation 2 units to the right and 2 units down, and then a translation 1 unit right and 3 units up. So if I just take that pre-image, what we're starting with, and move it 2 right and 2 down, this is where you'd end up. Now I'm not labeling it right now because I'm not done. It's a composition of things, so I need to keep going. It says then a translation of 1 to the right and 3 up. So if I take the one that I currently have in yellow and move it 1 right and 3 up, I end up here. So then we could say, oh, well, now this is my image. Now this is where I'm stopping. We could talk about the coordinates. So V prime would be 2 to the right and 4 up when you would graph that point. So it's 2, 4. Likewise, B prime is at 0, 3, and A prime is at 1, 0. Now that yellow one that I put in here, kind of unnecessary. You don't need to make a pit stop and sketch out this entire triangle if you're only ultimately interested in the final answer. So for this next one, we're not going to make that pit stop. For this one, we are going to end up just doing it all together. So reading this one, while it says I'm going to take my x coordinates and add 1, a little bit later I'm going to take my x coordinates and subtract 1. That's like saying I'm going to first go to the right one and then I'm going to go to the left one, meaning x coordinates aren't changing. For the y coordinates, I'm going down 2 and then I'm doing nothing. So if you put these two translations together, nothing's going to end up happening with the x coordinates, because after you go right one, you're going to go right back to the left one. Then you're going to go down 2 and you're going to stop. Meaning the one that I currently have in blue. If you like the idea of seeing that intermediate one, the one that I have in yellow, that's fine, but it's not necessary. You could do all those steps at once where you just keep your x coordinates the same and then just drop everything down 2. So then we could tell our image coordinates x prime, r prime, c prime by just saying, well, I went to the right 3, down 4 for x prime, right 3, down 2 for r prime, and 5, -1 for c prime. Of those points, whether they're the pre-image or my final image's points, I want to know which point is an x-intercept and why. So looking at that, remember x-intercept is a point that is on your x-axis. It's a point where your y-coordinate is 0. And there actually is one of those. C is an x-intercept because it has a y-coordinate of 0. C is located at 5, 0. It's on the x-axis. But the next question of having a y-intercept, nothing is on the y-axis. There are no coordinates that have an x-coordinate of 0. So there are no y-intercepts for this problem. So the number 8, a composition has been performed on the pre-image of UNEF, what's graphed for us, so that it's taking it x minus 3, y plus 4, and then x, y minus 1. The first question, though, is just what's the length of the pre-image UN? UN's already graphed for us. UN is right here. All I want to know, don't do any translations at all, what's the length of this? That's something from first semester that you still need to remember how to do. The length of something can be found using our distance formula. So if I'm going to use my distance formula, I'm going to have to know the coordinates of U and N. So U is at 1, -4, N is at 5, -3, so I can find the length of UN by substituting my x coordinates and my y coordinates into the formula. This hopefully should be just review at this point. So then if you evaluate that, you end up having the square root of 17, and that's going to be my length of UN. So then the next question, I want the length of the final image U prime N prime. So in order to do that, I actually have to do this translation now. So I'm going to do it all in one step. I'm going to take my x coordinates and go to the left 3, and then I'm not going to do anything left or right. I'm going to take my y coordinates and go up 4, but if I'm going to come back down 1, I'm really only going up 3. So that means I'm taking everything and going left 3, up 4. Sorry, left 3, up 3. That puts me here. So putting my coordinates on here, and again, if I'm interested in U prime, N prime, I'm going to label my coordinates of U prime, N prime. And then it's distance formula again. I'm going to take my x coordinates of -2 and 2. I'm going to take my y coordinates of 0 and -1. and I'm just going to evaluate them, and hey, look at that. I got the exact same answer. The question now is, what do you notice about these? Why is it the same answer, basically? And the reason they're the same is we didn't change that image and preimage. They are the exact same thing, just I slid one over. So that's because we had said that that is an isometry, and isometry keeps the images as congruent, so they should be the exact same thing. Not a coincidence, it better turn out to be the same. A couple more questions on this. I want the slope of u prime f prime, and if you look at that, that is a vertical line. You could either use your slope formula, or you could just count rise over run. Either way, you're going to have something over 0, and if you can't remember, put in your calculator. 1 divided by 0 is not 0, and it's not 1. It's undefined. Vertical lines always have an undefined slope. Next, I want the slope of f prime e prime. Well, that's a horizontal line. So you could count, this one is rising nothing, 0, but it's running 4. If you do 0 divided by 4, that's going to be a slope of just 0. Horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. And finally, a bit of review still, the midpoint of u prime n prime, that was that kind of diagonalish looking line here. If I want the point in the middle, I need my midpoint formula. So I'm still going to group my x-coordinates and my y-coordinates, but remember you're adding this time. So I'm going to add the -2 and the 2. I'm going to add the -1 and the 0. And you're going to end up finding the midpoint is at 0, -0.5, which you can kind of visualize would be right here. It logically makes sense that we have the right answer. Now this is kind of what we were doing when we were graphing it. I want a rule that takes these two translations and just says do it all in one step. So in words, this first translation is saying go to the right 3. The second translation is saying go to the left 3. So in the end, don't go left or right. Stay put. Your x-coordinates stay the same. For the y-coordinates, it's saying, well, go down 4. And then go down 4 more. So ultimately, when you put those two things together, you're going down 8. So the x-coordinates staying the same. The y-coordinates are going down 8. So we'd write that x comma y would change to x comma y minus 8, which is much more simplified than doing two translations. Similar directions here, but now in words. If you're going 3 to the right and then 1 down, and then going 2 more to the right and 1 up. Well, I'm going to combine my lefts and rights, well, my rights in this case. If you're going 3 to the right and then 2 more to the right, you just went 5 to the right. If you go 1 down and then 1 right back up, you were where you started. Y is not changing. So if you're going 5 to the right, your x is increasing by 5. If your y is not changing, I would just write y. So my coordinates, x comma y, are changing to x plus 5 comma y. And finally, a translation moves a onto a prime. There we go. I want to know where b prime would be. B prime is the image of b, 5 comma 4, and it's doing the same translation. So visually, if I had graphed this, A moved to A prime. Some kind of shift happened. And the same shift, up, down, left, right, whatever happened, is being applied to B. I want to know where B prime would end up being because of that. So while you could, I guess, technically graph it and figure it out that way, we could do this algebraically. So if I'm looking at my x-coordinates, I started at -3 and it changed to 0. That is an increase of 3. So x is being increased by 3. If I look at my y-coordinates, I started at 2, I drop back to 0. So my y-coordinates are decreasing by 2. So I could say it in words, or I could write down the rule that my x-coordinates increased by 3. So I went to the right 3. My y-coordinates decreased by 2. I subtracted 2 from y. I went down 2. The exact same thing is going to happen to b. My 5 comma 4 is going to be moved to the right 3 and down 2. So I'm just, since I don't have a graph, I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in. I'm going to say my 5 is going to be increased by 3. My 4 is going to be decreased by 2. So when you put that together, you find that while B started at 5, 4, B prime will be moved to 8, 2, since it's the same translation that happened to A and A prime. So that's all the notes that are left about translations. Hopefully you're trying the IXLs. Make sure you're actually doing them. They are great practices, and skipping them really is a detriment to you. Then there's a homework assignment on here that is, I believe, 10 problems. Make sure you're focusing on those. Come in, start out the year on a strong note, and get everything done that you need to get done. Good luck.